Listen carefully, traveler of the unseen path. This message is not arriving by accident. It has found you because something within you has been standing at the edge of a great crossing. Not your body, your soul. For a long time, you have looked toward the horizon and wondered why every step forward seemed to meet an invisible resistance. You prayed, you endured, you remained faithful when easier roads invited compromise. Yet each time progress appeared within reach, a shadow seemed to stretch across the ground before you. The untrained eye calls this misfortune. The wise recognize something deeper. A mountain hermit once said that the fiercest winds do not gather around empty valleys. They gather around the peaks, where ascent is taking place. Think about that.
The enemy rarely spends energy guarding what has no future. He concentrates his efforts where movement has already begun, where purpose is awakening, where God has already spoken life into what others call impossible. And perhaps that is why your spirit feels exhausted, not because heaven has forgotten you, but because you have entered a territory where every step matters. There are seasons when the battle is not over whether you will receive what God has prepared. The battle is over whether you will remain standing long enough to recognize it when it arrives. Tonight, you must see clearly, not with fearful eyes.
Imagine an ancient alchemist standing before a furnace. The fire grows hotter. The metal trembles. Impurities rise to the surface. To the metal, it feels like destruction. To the alchemist, it is preparation. Many souls misunderstand the season they are living in. They assume every difficulty is proof of abandonment. Yet some burdens arrive because something valuable is being refined. Have you noticed how old chains suddenly rattle when you begin moving toward freedom? How forgotten fears return? How ancient wounds speak again? How distractions multiply? How confusion appears at the exact moment clarity is needed. This is not coincidence. The enemy understands a truth many believers forget. A person who remembers who they are becomes difficult to control. That is why attacks often target identity before anything else. The goal is not merely to steal opportunity. The goal is to convince you that opportunity was never meant for you. To make you believe that yesterday owns tomorrow. To persuade you that past failures are prophecies. But God does not consult your past to determine your future. He consults His purpose. The enemy builds prisons from memory. God builds pathways from promise. One voice says, "Remember what happened." The other says, "Remember who called you." And between those two voices stands the battlefield of the human heart. The question is not which voice is speaking. The question is which voice you have chosen to follow. Now we arrive at the turning point, the moment when the voyager beneath the deep sea finally understands what has been happening all along. For years, he believed the pressure around him was proof he was sinking. Then one day he realized something profound. The pressure existed because he was descending into greater depths. Everything changed. Likewise, there comes a sacred moment when you stop interpreting resistance as rejection. You begin seeing it as evidence. Evidence that movement exists. Evidence that growth is occurring. Evidence that heaven is still active even when circumstances appear silent. The enemy thrives on panic. Panic clouds discernment. Panic causes rushed decisions. Panic convinces people to abandon the very roads they prayed to find. But power returns when fear loses authority. And fear loses authority when truth enters the room. You do not need to force every door open. You do not need to chase every opportunity. You do not need to accept every shortcut that appears dressed as a blessing. What belongs to you under God's hand will not require the surrender of your integrity. The soul begins to mature when it understands this. Not every delay is defeat. Not every silence is absence. Not every closed gate is denial. Sometimes God is teaching strength before stewardship. Sometimes He is building endurance before elevation. And sometimes the greatest miracle is not the change around you. It is the transformation occurring within you.
The architect of silence understands a secret that most people never learn. Strength is not noise. Authority is not panic. Power is not frantic movement. Real power is remaining anchored when chaos demands reaction. This is where mastery begins. Not when circumstances obey you, but when your spirit refuses to be ruled by circumstances. The enemy hopes exhaustion will persuade you to abandon your position. He hopes weariness will make compromise appear reasonable. He hopes discouragement will convince you that surrender is wisdom. Yet there is a difference between rest and resignation. A difference between peace and numbness. A difference between waiting and giving up. Many people stop fighting long before the battle is finished. Not because they were defeated,
because they became convinced that nothing would ever change. That lie has buried more dreams than failure itself. Hear this clearly. You are not called to worship outcomes. You are called to remain faithful. Faithfulness possesses a strange power. It continues walking when certainty disappears. It continues believing when evidence is scarce. It continues standing when emotions collapse. This kind of strength cannot be purchased. It is forged. Forged through nights of uncertainty. Forged through unanswered questions. Forged through seasons where God seems quiet but remains present. The soul that survives such seasons emerges carrying a weight that darkness struggles to challenge, because tested faith becomes unshakable faith. And now, the final revelation. The threshold you fear may be the doorway you prayed for. Read that again within your spirit. The threshold you fear may be the doorway you prayed for. What if the resistance is not announcing failure? What if it is announcing arrival? What if the reason the battle feels heavier is because you have traveled farther than you realize? The mountain hermit who reaches the summit does not curse the steepest part of the climb. He understands it was the final ascent. Perhaps your soul is standing in such a place now. Not abandoned, not forgotten, not overlooked. Standing at the edge of something sacred. God sees every hidden struggle, every private prayer, every weary night, every burden carried in silence. Nothing has escaped His sight. Your future has not been erased. Your purpose has not expired. Your story has not reached its conclusion. So do not surrender your vision to temporary darkness. Do not trade eternal promise for immediate relief. Do not mistake exhaustion for the end. Lift your eyes. Strengthen your spirit. Guard what God has placed within you. And when doubt whispers that the journey is over, answer it with unwavering conviction. I will remain. I will endure. I will trust. And above all, stand in your truth. For the path ahead belongs not to the one who never faced resistance, but to the one who refused to bow before it.